Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to this week's episode of the Montpelier Happy Hour here on WVEW 107.7 LP Brattleboro, your community radio station. I'm your host and producer of the show, Olga Peters, and this is the show where we talk about how everything in Montpelier shakes out for the rest of us. I want to welcome back to the show after a very busy legislative session, representative and regular contributor, Emilie Kornheiser from Brattleboro. Hello, Emilie.
Hi, Olga. I'm so happy to be back with you.
It's good to see you. And of course, thank you for joining us today, Representative and Speaker of the House, Jill Krowinski. It is great to see you too. I don't think I've seen you since maybe December you were on the show.
It's been way too long. Thank you so much for having me back. It's truly lovely to be here.
Well, I'm glad you are both here, and I can't wait to hear how, from your perspective, the legislative session gavelled out. And it's still pretty fresh. It was only last Saturday at the time of this recording that you adjourned, and I believe in June you have a veto session scheduled as well. So you're not quite out of the gate yet.
Right. That's so right.
Well, as I was preparing for this show, and I'll start with you, Jill. I was thinking about with every legislative session, there's always what we report on.
Mhm.
And then there's many of the things that just, for whatever reason, may not rise to the surface in the popular conversation. And so I was thinking for both of you, what in this year's session maybe wasn't talked about but was very important to you, whether it was new people in the house or whether it was a bill you worked on or a new skill you learned, an aha moment, whatever for you was important.
So that is such a great question. And I could literally, that could be the whole show. Let me talk to you about it. I mean, really going into this biennium, into this legislative session, been on a mission to ensure that we're creating a Vermont that works for everyone and leaves no one behind. And we made huge progress on really tough issues. I kept on saying we can do hard things and it's going to be hard. It's going to be a slog, but we're going to work together. We're going to roll up our sleeves. We're going to sit down at the table and we're going to figure it out together. So we made huge progress on issues around healthcare, climate change, public safety, flood recovery, affordable housing. We did so many tough things that Vermonters were asking us to do. Public safety, I could go on. I think that there are these little nuggets from the legislative session that sometimes go unnoticed. And I would say that one of the bills that I'm really proud of is this bill around in healthcare world around prior authorization, which creates huge barriers for healthcare providers and administrative work, and really limits their time with their patients. And it's something that we've been hearing about for a long time. And this was the year where we said, we're going to do it. We are going to tackle this challenge. And it's really, it's really hard, where you have insurance companies saying, no, you can't do this. We know you can't. And we have healthcare providers who are begging us to do it. And so I don't think this bill got a lot of attention, and it's on its way to the governor right now. But I will tell you, one of the special moments on the floor when we first passed it out of the House is we had a Republican member stand up and told this story about how she, at her primary care appointment, asked her doctor what we could do. Their doctor said, prior authorization. If you could deal with that issue, it would make a huge difference for us. It would give us more time with our patients, more time expanding access to who they can serve, and it would limit this administrative burden that they have. And the doctor said, I would do a happy dance. And so every time I think about this bill, I just think of our incredible healthcare providers out there being like, yes, thank you.
and that, congratulations, Jill. I will admit, I don't know what prior authorization is. Could you give us a quick little thumbnail sketch of what it is?
Sure. So for certain procedures, healthcare providers have to ask the insurance companies basically to say, hey, this is what my patient needs. Will you approve it? And so you have this whole process that you have to go through. And so you see, these tiny, healthcare providers, that have a small collective where they have to have a billing department. And it's this process of calling and appealing, and it's so burdensome for them. And it just takes time away from the patient and puts more time in front of a computer and a phone. So
Mm.
this is one thing, with the lack of action at the federal level with Congress on healthcare, we know that this is one thing that can really help our healthcare providers. And so again, and thinking about what's a bill that maybe didn't get a lot of attention that makes meaningful difference in people's lives, this is one of them.
Thank you. Thank you. How about you, Emilie?
So again, there was like so much we got done. And so healthcare is definitely like near the top of the list for me. When I first ran for office, was knocking on everyone's door, folks said that was the #1 issue. I went to Montpelier like super motivated to make a difference on healthcare, and then realized how hard it was. And this year we expanded Medicaid significantly as sort of like this step-by-step process to go towards like a Medicaid for all in Vermont, right? We talk about federally, we talk about Medicare for all. Medicare kind of stinks, and Medicaid is really, really awesome and is a state-controlled program. So that felt really exciting. It's going to make a big difference for older Vermonters, the Medicaid expansion, and soon also for younger Vermonters. The prior authorization thing is huge. And Olga, if you ever had a doctor be like, yes, we're going to do that, but I'm going to need to get rejected by the insurance company twice before I can, do this thing for you or that thing for you. That's what the prior authorization thing is. So it makes a big difference for patients too, to know that like, right.
Yeah,
it's like familiar now that we described it, right?
And it's never happened to me, but it happened to my stepfather when we were going through his cancer treatment. He needed certain medication, and they said, we're probably going to be rejected 2 or 3 times before we can actually get you your medication.
It's pretty exciting. And like, that's a huge amount of, it's a huge amount of labor. It's a huge amount of stress for patients. So that feels great. Expanding public safety by expanding like access to justice for sort of all sides of a conflict feels huge. That's like that's a big banner one. All of the work that we did on housing, both regulatory and funding wise, huge. And then I was sort of surprised when I started stacking up all of the environmental bills we had, because they just kept on coming and I hadn't quite seen them as a package until the end. And so that's like really helping the bees and pollinators by banning a lot of neonicotinoids. And now that it's the end of the session, I'm able to say that word like as a single word without stuttering. Continuing work on the Affordable Heat Act, the renewable energy standards. We're moving to 100% renewable energy in Vermont very, very soon. We did a lot around river corridors and floodplains, protecting more wildlife, really just sort of like and then this really cool climate superfund bill, which is just amazing about really like making sure the same way we hold polluters responsible for other chemicals, we're holding polluters responsible for climate change. So that's all really exciting. I have like my tiny sleeper hits. I'll name 2 because that's what you actually asked. Sorry. One is we are allowing requiring that foster kids have access to their records. And that's like that's a really special one for me, because I've had friends who went through foster care, who then worked in the social services system, who had relationships with the DCF office and like went and knocked on the door and were like, hi, can I have my own records? And they couldn't get them. And like, that is it's just, first of all, like you just should have right to information about yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, it's just like a big part of the healing, reconciling. Often you don't remember things clearly from it. It's just, anyway, sleeper hit for me on that one. Speaking of sort of access to your information, big data privacy bill, that's probably a whole show, but that's not a sleeper hit. A sleeper hit for my own committee is we did a lot of work to reform the property tax sale process. Some towns do that very, very consistently and have very sort of strong procedures that create a lot of fairness and equity. And not all towns do that. Not all towns have had the capacity to sort of set up those systems. And so we really set up a baseline set of rules for if a property is going to go up for tax sale, here's what you need to do first. Here's like essentially how much profit people can make off of someone else's suffering, really limiting that, really,
Mhm.
and making sure that the top priority is keeping people in their homes and keeping municipalities whole. And so that felt like a really fun little sleeper hit.
That's so
The
important. So
yeah,
yeah.
Mhm.
love that one.
Mhm.
We did a cool thing near the very end with food stamps.
Oh, okay.
So that if there is, where we sort of expanded access to prepared food for folks on food stamps, so that if you can get exceptions, basically. So for folks who don't know, you're not allowed to use food stamps for prepared food. And that's because, there's definitely some morality there around like how making sure people are spending their money responsibly, and prepared food's not a responsible way to spend your money. And like we can go pros and cons on that kind of like paternalistic decision making on the behalf of government.
Mhm.
But in this case, there's a lot of folks who are on food stamps who actually don't have access to kitchens. Say they're
That
living in
was
a
my first
motel,
thought. Yeah.
or there's a natural disaster, like say a flood. And so this is really sort of expands exceptions opportunities so that folks can access prepared food, and sets up a system where we can like very quickly move on the Everyone Eats program again if we need to in a natural disaster. So that was a really fun little sleeper hit. I think I'll stop there, but I could probably go on for a really long time.
Thank you. And I'm curious, are there any bills that did not make it through that were disappointing for you? We'll start with Jill.
Well, and I wonder if we're gonna have the same one. This is a good test. So we have been trying for years on a right to repair bill. And
Mhm.
it's really just it's common sense that you should be able to fix your tractor, your lawnmower. My husband is just like Mr. Project and is like currently working on a Subaru right now. Like that's how we are. We're Vermonters. We like it's important for us to fix things and just not constantly buy new things.
Mhm.
And to have the tools and the way to do it. And so we got it across the House and was in the Senate, and it just didn't make it at the end. And so that's one I for sure will have on our radar when we come back next session.
How about you,
That's not
Emilie?
mine, though. I do have a crush on that bill. It's one of the very first bills I sponsored. And so I'm excited it got as far as it did.
Yes.
And how much sort of perspectives on it in the House have changed over the last few years. So that feels great. My disappointments about things that didn't get across the finish line are family medical leave.
Right.
And like we've sort of forgotten about it, but it's still the same
This is
biennium.
the
So I'm going to
first
stick.
session, right?
Yeah.
Like this was
Mhm.
year 2.
Yeah,
And
year 2. And so
you're
like that was sort of, had its final death when Jill gabbled us out
Mm.
to be reborn again next session. And then the other one is, the House moved, and Olga, we talked about this last week, but the House moved, or 2 weeks ago, sometime recently,
Mhm.
the House moved this really, really comprehensive bill to like solve our housing problem. And that also like pieces of it survived, but